All right, welcome to the 11th meeting of the Biennial Audits Oversight Commission. I'm Eric Costello, Councilman from the 11th District, Chair of the committee. I'm joined by Council President Nick Mosby, City Comptroller Bill Henry, Councilman Chris Burnett, 8th District, Councilman Isaac Gitzy Schleifer, 5th District, Inspector General Isabel Cumming, and Director of Finance Henry Raymond. First order of business, I want to apologize for the delay in getting started. Should be able to move forward quite expeditiously. First order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from the previous meeting. Is there any discussion or is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Motion to move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Excellent. Motion carries. First order of business, we are going to review the city auditor's plan for the scope of performance audits for Group B audits, which will be conducted during calendar year 2022. Josh, if you could take it away, going to ask that you limit your presentation to somewhere in the 10 to 15 minute range. And actually, hang on one second, Josh, before you get started. Bear with me for 1 second, Josh. I'm going to ask that you just do the Department of Human Resources. We'll take questions on that, and then we'll move to the rest of the agencies and go through each of them. Our DHR director, Quentin Herbert, has a commitment that he simply cannot get out of, specifically his wife's birthday. So I do not want to get this man in any bit of trouble. He did let me know about this in advance, so we would have gotten to him already. I am certain that my colleagues on the commission will understand and appreciate the accommodation. So Josh, if you could go to DHR first, we'll take any questions, ask Director Herbert any questions that are necessary, and then we'll go through the rest of the agencies as a group. Please and thank you.
Can I ask Margaret to pass the sharing baton to me?
Yes, you can. Consider that asked. Margarita, if you could please accommodate.
You can move forward.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these basically we're going over the proposed scopes for the audit, and for Department of Human Resources, we were looking at the FMLA and ADA, and we were looking at to do an audit to evaluate whether FMLA and ADA requests are processed consistently across city agencies and are compliant with the city's policies and procedures and any other federal or state regulations. And then it also had another option, which was to determine whether the vendor who monitors part-time employment contracts effectively delivers the agreed services, and DHR effectively monitors those service outcomes. So the first one is looking at the decentralized / centralized processes for FMLA and ADA, looking for consistency and compliance with laws. And the second one is looking at part-time employees and making sure that they are treated properly in regards to benefits and the number of hours they worked.
Excellent, thank you. Director Herbert, do you want to comment on that? Do you have any concerns or questions for the city auditor?
No, these are two of the measures that we discussed. We did discuss the fact that the FMLA and ADA piece has components that are out in the agencies, but for the parts that we have oversight and accountability for, I think this is a good measure. I think this will give us some good information about how we need to track these going forward. to make sure that we are in compliance. And with the vendor, for the committee's benefit, we have a vendor that monitors the hours that part-time employees work monthly. And when they work the requisite number of hours that triggers their Affordable Care Act insurance coverage, they provide notice back to our Office of Benefits, who then reaches out to the employees so that they can enroll in benefits when they're eligible, when they've worked the requisite number of hours. And so this will be another good measure to ensure that we are notifying those employees timely and that we have those mechanisms in place to ensure that we are complying with the ACA.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues on the commission, any questions for the city auditor or Director Herbert on this?
Happy
Director
birthday.
Herbert, please have, oh. Do you have a question?
I wished his
Sorry.
wife a happy birthday.
Yep.
Thank
Gotcha.
you. Thank you.
Yep, Director Herbert, you're excused. Thank you very much. And
Thank you,
please
sir.
let your wife know that 30 of your closest friends in city government also wish your wife a happy birthday. Have an
Thank you.
excellent evening.
I'll be sure to tell her to
Thank you.
watch it on Charm TV.
I hope that's not how you're spending your wife's birthday, but okay. Mr. Auditor, if you want to take it back from the top from agency number 1 through 8, please and thank you. And then we will do questions after as a group.
So the first agency in no particular order was the police department, and the area was overtime and off-duty employment. The audit objective is to evaluate whether the police department has monitoring controls over total time. That would include regular hours, overtime hours, and off-duty hours worked by police, and whether the police department has their officers adhere to those policies and procedures for overtime and off-duty employment. There is a industry practice to limit the total number of hours that police officers work in order to make sure that they have enough time for rest and can work and function effectively. For the health department, we were looking at sub-recipients monitoring. The health department receives a significant portion of funding from the federal government, and part of that funding is when they pass those grant funds down to a subrecipient who will be acting as a disperser of the funds. The city is required to monitor and make sure that those subrecipients are complying with all the federal regulations. And this audit objective is to determine whether the health department has effective monitoring controls over subrecipients to comply with the federal, state, and other funding organizations, rules, and regulations. Next is parks and recreations. We were looking at the area of prioritizing and funding distribution of park maintenance, and this was to determine how Rec and Parks prioritizes park maintenance projects and whether funds are equitably distributed. Number 5, Department of Law. It was to evaluate the Department of Law's monitoring of the compliance goals, the minority business goals, women business goals, and any other business goals that we have, veteran goals, etc. For Department of Planning, we were looking at 2 different audit objectives, either to determine whether the Department of Planning permit review process is efficient and effective, or to evaluate the capital budgeting process to determine how city prioritizes capital projects and whether funds are equitably distributed or distributed based on a certain criteria established by the city. Department of Transportation, we were looking at contract monitoring to determine whether street cut repairs were completed in an effective and timely manner to minimize safety impacts to the public, and if the current model is cost effective. And then for Mayor's Office of Employment Development, looking at compliance, determine whether the MOED has effective processes, controls, and monitoring over the local hiring requirements and the reporting of those requirements. And that would be related to the local hiring law.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's, can you go back to number 1 in your presentation? And then we'll go agency by agency. I'll start off with police. I think this question's for Director Raymond. I know that the administration had initiated an overtime study back in 2019. Do you know if that was completed or that ended up getting scrapped and rolled into something else? Or anyone from BPD is free to answer that, but I know Director Raymond at the time was familiar.
Yeah, good afternoon. My understanding is that report was completed
Got it.
and was issued during the last administration.
Got it. Thank you. Colleagues, any questions for BPD? I know we have Michelle Wertzberger and some other folks from the BPD team. Michelle, I assume that you and your team have had an opportunity to review this. Are there any questions or concerns on your end?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Michelle Wertzberger, Director of Government Affairs for the Baltimore Police Department. I am joined by a couple of colleagues, Miss Paula Williams, who's the Director of Fiscal, and Sarala Facey Daatz, who is our Director of Budget and Grants. We have reviewed this and this objective, and we wholeheartedly embrace it.
Excellent. Colleagues, anything for BPD? All right, Michelle, thank you very much. You and your team are excused. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, sir.
Let's jump. Yes, ma'am. Let's jump over to Health Department. I guess I have a question again for Director Raymond, just kind of citywide. Is this at all, and Josh, is this at all tied into kind of the grants management piece at the citywide level that we've kind of been talking about over the past couple of years, or is this a little bit different?
This would be, I don't want to say it's not related because it is grants management, but this would be tangential. So the grants management process that's centralized in the city would be monitoring how the city is capturing those costs related to it. Basically, the city agency that's handing the funds over needs to do that in a microcosm for the sub-recipients. And so instead of having the city prepare reports of, what was procured and what time was spent on the grant, they need to be reviewing those reports and reviewing them for the criteria set by that federal grant. I would not, well, I don't know if there's any plans for the centralized city grant management process to go down to this level. My expectation of what I've seen in the past is that the agency dispersing those funds would be monitoring that piece.
Thank you. Director Raymond, you good with that?
Yes. And just to echo what the city auditor indicated, sub-recipient grant monitoring would be a responsibility at the agency level.
Excellent. Colleagues, any questions for the city auditor or for health? Who do we have on for the health department?
Good evening, everyone. This is Leslie Thompson, Chief of Finance and Administration. In terms of this particular audit objective, this is something that the Health Department is deeply committed to doing the sub-recipient monitoring. Matter of fact, we're currently trying to build out capacity for compliance on matters. So this is wholeheartedly accepted.
Excellent. Colleagues, anything for health? All right, health department is excused. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Rec and Parks, colleagues, any questions for the city auditor or Director Moore? Director Moore, has your team had a chance to review this? Do you have any questions for the city auditor?
Yes, sir. Our team has looked at this goal and we fully embrace this goal. It's in line with what we're focused on when we're looking at equitable across our current operations. And this is something we've already prioritized in capital and also in our playground strategies. And so this just will support what we're doing in park maintenance and focusing closely at the equitable process when it comes to our park maintenance projects.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Director, you and your team are excused. Who's up next? I know DHR was number 4. Josh, can you go to the next slide? Please and thank you. Department of Law. Colleagues, any questions for the city auditor or for Mr. Salisbury, who is chief of staff to the solicitor? Mr. Salisbury, have you had a chance to review this with your team?
Yeah, we've had an opportunity to talk to the auditor and to talk to our team about this. I know that, you know, MBU has been focused on a lot of new and exciting updates, and they're working on a number of different things under their, you know, under their scope. And I think that, you know, we would certainly, you know, enthusiastically welcome anything that's going to help us sort of push that process along. So I don't have anything to add to that here.
Excellent. Colleagues, anything for law? All right, outstanding. Law, you guys are excused. Thank you very much. Josh, next slide, please. Let's jump to, we're going to come back to planning last because that looks like it's going to require a little discussion. Let's jump to DOT.
Mr. Chair, this is Liam Davis with DOT. I just
Yep.
wanted to say we're joined here tonight by our Deputy Director of Administration, Letitia Griffin, and her team. She'll be able to talk through some of these questions tonight. I just did want to flag for the council that we did drop our new proposed street cuts policy about 2 Fridays ago. So that's something to consider for this objective. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Liam. Josh, do we have any, does that impact the scope at all, the fact that DOT has a draft street cuts policy out for public comment? How does that factor in as you think through the design of this audit and initiating it?
When is that new policy supposed to be put into place or implemented?
It goes out for comment for 30 days. So assuming there aren't any material changes that result from the comments, which, you know, we'll have to wait to see what comments come in. Right now, we're targeting the new policy to go into effect early March.
So what I would propose in this is to, we would start our audit in the second half of the year after you've had the policy in place for 3 to 6 months, and then we should be able to do an assessment based on that.
Josh, my initial reaction to that is that seems to make sense. However, the charter is pretty clear that the period of review for the audits completed during this year is the previous 2 fiscal years.
Okay, so in that case,
I'm not saying it has to be that way. I mean, maybe there's reasonable justification here because of the policy. I just wanted to flag that.
Right. I mean, ideally, we want more than, you know, a few months to evaluate, to be able to test and see if it's effective, because a lot of times there's, you know, let's say bugs being worked out or kind of refinement. I would recommend we change the scope on this one. We change the audit objective.
Colleagues, any thoughts?
I know you're going to be shocked, Mr. Chair, that I support Josh's suggestion.
Josh, we're going to be coming back in about 6 weeks to discuss recommendation follow-up on Group A. Would it make sense for you to bring back a proposed recommendation for this one back to the commission in, you know, 6 weeks plus or minus, and then we can discuss that at the front end of the agenda?
And we get the Biennial Audit Commission a proposal within a week, and then maybe you could have a week to discuss it and see if there's other parties to bring in, and we could lay out that scope and, you know, kind of get our audit planning moving.
Yeah. Okay. That'd be great. Is there a way to factor into this one utility work coordination around street cuts, even if it's not directly related to the specific street cut policy?
I have to look into that.
Okay. Colleagues, commission members, any thoughts on that? Mr. Davis, any concerns with that? Obviously, the city auditors gonna need to go back and look at that and talk with your team, but
Assuming our deputy director is okay.
Yeah, we don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
okay.
So if Deputy Director Griffin is okay, I think we're solid.
Okay. Mr. Auditor, we'll wait to hear back from you. That sounds like a plan for DOT. So that one's on hold for a couple weeks. And then Mayor's Office of Employment Development. Colleagues, any questions for the city auditor or Jason Perkins Cohen or whomever? Oh, I think I saw Mackenzie Garvin's on.
So I just want to note for folks that as the council members know, the local hiring law has recently changed, right, in the last month or two. So certainly happy to have the audit team look into this. Depending on timing, you may be looking at how things worked under the previous law. Just want to note that for the record. And, you know, again, we'll comply and work with whoever about whatever makes sense.
Thanks, Director. Can you quickly outline the changes to the law and to see if there's a potential for Josh's team to review the aspects of the law that are still in place and to avoid any that may have changed?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna ask Mackenzie, who's with us. I mean, basically, the new law is deeper than the previous law and requires a bit more rigor in the requirements of contractors, excuse me, who receive funds from the city. I don't know if Mac, if you have that at your fingertips, or we want to submit that to you all in writing.
I can submit it to you generally in writing. It hasn't been implemented yet. The existing local hiring law is still in effect, which is any city contract that's over $300,000. Those contractors who are awarded need to comply with the 51% of new hire rule. And there are also some other requirements for how often they need to meet with us, post with us, and provide regular reporting. The new local hiring law, I'm obviously not as familiar with it, but I know it generally. It hasn't started yet. That law will start at the time of bid. So contractors that are bidding over the $5 million, they will have to submit a certain amount of reporting to the Department of Finance. We have to determine a process between MOED and the Department of Finance once a contractor is awarded. And there is another amount of documents that need to be collected in addition to implementing the local hiring law. And then also on the existing, the old, we'll just call it old for sake of this conversation, local hiring law, there is also any city contractor that is awarded a subsidy that's over $5 million, they also have to comply with the law. So there are a lot of different elements we put into our budget for additional positions to implement the new law. And also we use a system to track all of the data, and we'll have to build out a new module to collect all of the data related to the new law.
Thank you. So Mackenzie, just to confirm and summarize, nothing in the old law has gone away. It's just become a little more detail oriented.
Nothing in the old law has gone away, but the new law will impact the old law and the way that we collect data, the way we track information from contractors, because contractors where the old law was applicable, the new law will also be applicable.
Perfect. So if you could send that summary to the city auditor and please be sure to copy me on that. Josh, from what I'm hearing, you probably should be able to just go about this one with the proposed scope, but I guess probably want to hold off until you see what MOED provides. Does that sound right? I think you're on mute, Josh.
So I agree that I'm less concerned about moving forward with this scope because it is looking at the monitoring protocols and tools. I think that we would actually be able to add value by looking at the design of the controls and stuff and processes put in place, even if it wasn't gone live, and that we would actually add value to the agency through that review process.
Great. Colleagues, any questions, concerns? Jason McKenzie, how soon do you think you can get that summary? And by summary, please don't produce more than like a half page.
We could definitely get it into you this week for sure.
Perfect. Josh, does that work for you? Excellent. MOED, you guys are excused. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks.
Department of Planning, Josh, can you kind of walk us through the OR here?
Okay, so for the Department of Planning, we had we did a risk assessment by meeting with stakeholders and also with Department of Planning, and it was noted that the permit review process has some inefficiencies in it and how it's routed. So we had included that as a potential scope to evaluate that routing process and see if we could do an efficiency audit over there. The capital budgeting process, which is one of the, I guess, bigger roles of the, in dollar wise, of the Department of Planning, is filters through or kind of runs through the Department of Planning. And so it also came up in our risk assessment meetings that the identifying where funds need to be spent and then the enormous challenge of allocating limited resources to critical needs and then, you know, initiatives and, you know, just improvement needs, and looking how that process is set up, and especially the transparency on there so that when different stakeholders are making a decision of which projects to choose, then, you know, they're also seeing which projects they're not choosing.
And in terms of capacity, your office probably only has the capacity to look at one or the other.
So we could do both, just a less all-encompassing from capital budgeting. In other words, we would not look at all the agencies that are part of the capital budgeting process. We would narrow it down to some primary ones and then to review the processes around those and the interaction between those.
Thank you. Colleagues, what is your thoughts? Start with Mr. President.
I'm okay, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Comptroller,
I am okay as well.
Councilman Schleifer,
I'm good, thanks.
Councilman Burnett,
I'm good, thank you.
Inspector General Cumming,
No issues.
Director Raymond.
I concur as well.
Just quick question for my 6 colleagues. We're in agreement they're going to do both? Is that, yep, okay. Everyone's, all right, perfect. Okay, Josh. Okay, so we are ready to take a vote on this plan. The only amendments to this plan for number 6, it would be an and instead of an or. And for number 7, DOT is going to or Josh is going to get back to us after consulting with DOT. And number 8, MOAD is going to get us some clarification on the changes in the law, and Josh's team is going to incorporate that into the scope. With that being said, is there a motion to approve this audit plan for calendar year 2022?
So
moved.
moved, Henry Raymond.
Second, Isabel Cumming.
Oh, actually, let me take a step back. I'm so sorry. Director Raymond, can you withdraw that motion, please?
Yes, I withdraw the motion.
Director Ryer, Department of Planning, I'm so sorry. Do you have any feedback on this one? Any questions, concerns for the auditor?
No, I do not. I'm fine.
Okay, I sincerely apologize, Director.
No worries.
All right, is there a motion?
So
Director Raymond,
Henry Raymond.
second by Cumming.
Yes.
Excellent. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, we have an audit plan for calendar year 2022. Excellent. All right, Josh, can you please take down the presentation? All right. So our Group A agencies, just wanted to touch base with you all briefly. Thank you for sitting through this with us this evening. So moving forward, we had said late last year that we were going to start to discuss recommendation follow-up. My understanding is that, well, let me take a step back. When we put this charter amendment together, I know that Director Raymond was in all of those conversations with me back in late 2015, early 2016. I know my colleague at the time, Councilman Mosby, was involved in these conversations. We had always envisioned the recommendation follow-up function of the city auditor as the way to hold the administration accountable for implementing recommendations that were made by the auditor in order to improve efficiency and effectiveness of city operations and hopefully save taxpayer dollars. So after 5 years, we are starting to kind of transition into the next phase of the Biennial Audits Oversight Commission, and we're going to start to review the status of the implementation of recommendations made by the city auditor in previous years. I know that that is something you discuss at some level of detail in front of the Board of Estimates after the city auditor presents his audit report. You are usually there at the Board of Estimates to answer any questions. So moving forward, we're probably going to come back in about plus or minus 6 weeks for our next meeting. And we're going to ask a representative from each of the Group A agencies to come before us. We're going to ask you, well, first, the city auditor is going to present a spreadsheet or presentation that will show the recommendations that have been made in your 3 previous audits. So that would be calendar year 17, 19, and 21. And then we're going to ask for what the status is of implementing those recommendations. We're going to ask the auditor for their opinion, whether or not Josh and his team concurs with the status of that recommendation. And for recommendations that have not been fully implemented yet, ask questions about why they have not been implemented and what the plan is to implement those recommendations. So with that, I'd like to open up the floor to any of our Group A well, first, let me start with our colleagues. Commission members, are there any questions or concerns on this? This is essentially the design of what we discussed in early and late 2021. Inspector General Cumming?
I would just humbly request that we get that information at least a week before this meeting. Because I really do like to have the opportunity to read through everything carefully.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. We will have that. We were hoping to have it tonight, but there were some other technical issues. But I think it's safe to say we'll have that in the next 1 to 2 weeks. I want to thank Comptroller Henry and his team for aggregating all that information together for us. That'll be very helpful in guiding our discussion. But we should have that in very short order. I would say at least, 3 weeks before the next meeting. So we'll have ample time to review that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, any other questions on that? All right, Group A agencies, do you have any questions, concerns?
This is Letitia Griffin for the Department of Transportation. I don't have any questions or concerns.
You, DOT, right, Ms. Griffin?
Yes.
My apologies. You were excused some time ago. You're good to go.
Oh, okay.
You were Group B.
Good.
So our Group A agencies are Finance, Public Works, Fire, Housing and Community Development, General Services, BDC, Baltimore City Information Technology, and the successor to the Mayor's Office of Human Services. I see you smiling, Mr. Wells.
Yes. So thank you, Bill Wells, Deputy Director of Mayor's Office of Homeless Services. I wanted to make sure, as we've been working with auditors recently, that it was flagged which responsibilities and duties had transferred to MOCFS and which had transferred to MOHS. I'm not sure if there's a representative from MOCFS who was invited this evening. I know that's something that comes up from time to time, where different programs and responsibilities went when Human Services was split. So anything that we could understand in advance that would allow us to coordinate and make sure that the right agency was prepared to speak about the right performance measure.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. That's a great point. Josh and Casey, once your team gets that kind of that final document over to us, we can go through everything for MOHS from the previous 3 audits. And we'll ask Nina and the administration to have MOCFS there to answer, essentially some of the stuff presumably would fall under your shop, Bill, and some would fall under MOCFS. So we'll make sure we have the right agencies there. And that's part of the reason why we specifically next to MOHS included language in the charter that says parentheses or successor entity to this office. I guess we foresaw this change, this organizational change coming at some point. So
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Group A agencies, any other questions, concerns?
This is Marcia Collins with DPW, if I may ask.
Yep.
So there's going to be a spreadsheet. Will that spreadsheet be shared with the agencies just to make sure we're touching on all of the recommendations? And my second half of that question is, do you want that response prepared in a similar format or just verbally as we go through them?
For answer to the first question is yes. We will make sure that's disseminated to each of the Group A agencies. So Marguerite, if you could please work with Nina and make sure that gets to each of our 8 agencies. Well, 9, because MOHS and MOCFS. That's the first piece. Colleagues, open it up to the floor to answer Ms. Collins' second question. Do we want something in writing or do we want something verbally? Do we want both?
It would be nice to have it in writing. It's not.
Yeah, I would second that.
I agree. In right.
Sounds like we have consensus. So, Josh, once your team gets that over, if you can send that over to me, and I'll work with you guys offline, and we'll develop a communication to send out to each of our 9 Group A agencies. So, Marcia, there will be written guidance provided as to what the expectation is. So, thank you for asking that. That was a great question that we obviously had not anticipated. We'll make sure we get that written guidance to you. And we should be able to get that to you at least a month in advance to provide you adequate time to prepare a response.
Thank you. May I ask, do you want to see this written response in advance?
Well, yes, But what we also want to do is make sure that we're not. Yes, we do. So let me circle up in terms of the written guidance that you receive. What I don't want to do is ask you to prepare a 20-page book report and detract from the other important work that you're doing. But yes, it would be nice to have something written in advance, maybe a week before the meeting. That would give us some time to review it offline, so we're prepared to ask thoughtful questions and maximize the use of the time at the next hearing. Great question. Josh, does that sound good? All right, great.
Thank you.
Group A agents. Group A agencies, any other questions?
Yes,
Ms.
Mr.
Washington?
Chair. If we are going to provide response in writing, may I ask when we will receive all of the documents that we need to prepare in advance?
Yes. So what I envision happening, do we have Josh, do we have Casey on the line? You're on mute, Josh. You're still on mute, sir.
She's in as a panelist, sir.
She is. Casey, excellent. What do you anticipate being the time frame to provide the completed spreadsheet?
As soon as I can talk to BSIT tomorrow, if they can help me, it should be to you by tomorrow night.
Okay, excellent. And thank you so much, Casey.
Thank
I
you,
know
Mr.
you
Chair.
were doing all the legwork there. So I anticipate getting that spreadsheet this week, Ms. Washington, and then I will work directly with the comptroller's office to put together some written guidance for the agencies. So my goal will be to get that out to you by no later than this Friday. What you will get is one spreadsheet that covers all 9 of the agencies. And you likely have somewhere between 2 and 3 audit objectives for each of your previous 3 audits, so no more than 7 or 8 rows. The background on those recommendations that is made will have been in the previous audit products, which are all available on the comptroller's website. So I'll make sure I include a link on there. And then, like for your example, for fire, you just click on that link and just search for fire, and you'll see the 3 reports. It'll just be the performance ones, not the financials.
Thank you
But
so
great
much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's helpful. Group A agencies, anyone else? All right, colleagues, any other questions? All right, so this week, I'll wait for the spreadsheet from Casey and team. I will work with Josh to develop written guidance for what expectations are. And we'll work on getting another meeting scheduled for sometime around, we'll look at maybe March 14th, plus or minus, but I'll circulate something over email to make sure it works for folks, and then we'll go from there. That being said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Henry Raymond.
Motion by Raymond, second by Schleifer. We are now in adjournment. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.